Welcome to the Leaderish Podcast, leadership lessons straight up, with your hosts, Dr. Jen and Regina. Hey, Jen, how's it going?
Hey, Regina. I'm okay. How are you?
Well, I'm doing well, but you've kind of had a pretty hard week.
It has been a really hard week. So I would say, well, for this crew that listens, our listeners, you have frequently heard Bella bark. We have two Goldens and our sweet Bella, who was 12. We lost her last Friday, a week ago. So it's been a really rough week, but doing this is making me so excited and feeling better already.
Yeah. Well, I know I speak for everyone. We're really sorry for your loss. I love Bella. You know that. Bella and I have had many cuddles and much love. And my heart breaks for Bear as well.
I know we have a depressed golden retriever. So if anyone, and Walter's saying hi.
And
Hi,
Walter is also very, very upset.
That was a perfect moment to bark. Thank you so much, Walter.
Thank you, Walter. We're going to get you spending some time with Bear very soon.
Yes, Bear needs all the good thing is we're taking Bear everywhere and he loves people, as you know, and he loves it. So we're trying to get him a little pep in his step.
Right. I have a few things though that may put a smile on your face.
I have not paid attention to anything at all, hardly in the last week because work's been crazy, which has been a good distraction. But please tell me something good.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you something good.
I knew you were going to say that or sing it.
Okay. So we got another 5-star review on Apple Podcast. I do know who this one is from because he was pretty open with his name. And so what I love about this, first of all, it's a he.
Ah, fantastic.
Yes. So Corey, thank you for this. And here's what he writes. He says, I'm always looking for a good podcast of leadership. Some fade and push agendas, selling books, so I lose interest. These two women have been awesome, diverse conversations with helpful tools to try. Just what I needed. Keep going, ladies. I'm loving it.
That is the first male listener that's reached out saying how much he likes it, and that is awesome.
Yes. And
Thank
he
you,
also,
Corey.
and the other reason I know it's from him, because he also reached out to us in email as well.
He did.
But I wanted to read the review so you guys can all go see how awesome that review is.
Walter is going crazy right now, living his best life, and it is cracking me up. I wish you all could see it.
He's got my sock. He just grabs the sock. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
He is literally, he was eye to eye with Regina a moment ago, which was quite a hilarious sight.
I have one more. Yeah, I have one more. Really, I have lots that I can share. I'm just trying to pick out a few. I mean, we have had a dynamic few weeks. We released Imposter Syndrome, and we released the Leading Through Leadership and Depression, or Leading Through Trauma and Depression. And there has been an overwhelming response to both of those episodes. This one is on the imposter syndrome. This actually came from the woman who requested it. And so she said, just catching up on your podcast. Thank you and Jen for addressing the topic. As always, great job making it real and providing practical tools to deal with. So proud of you. Congratulations. And wait for it. Keep changing the world.
Wow. I don't have words. That's incredible.
I know.
So needed that. And I'm so glad we're doing this right now. And also an apology to our listeners. Because we are going a week without an episode because of Sweet Bella, because it was a really rough week and I just couldn't get it together and make it happen. So
it's okay.
A little grace would be appreciated.
I'm sure that there is no one out there saying, oh, I'm not going to listen anymore.
I know.
We got you, Jen.
Agree.
We all got you.
Thank you. It is time for my favorite segment,
of course,
which is the drink of the day. So, Regina, what's in your cup?
Well, now we know that I've been on a water, and of course, I love my unsweet tea. Today, though, I decided was a very special day because we're recording and I am drinking blackberry citrus sparkling water. And if you haven't tried the Kroger brand of the blackberry citrus sparkling water, it is delicious. I know everybody goes on and on and on about LaCroix. It's like half the price and tastes just as good or better.
That's very fancy of you this Friday.
What are you drinking?
I actually have Starbucks.
Ooh.
The Tom Purdom went out this morning and got us Starbucks as a treat because it's Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am drinking a flat white and it is quite heavenly.
I don't even know what that is.
I'm not 100% sure, but it's delicious.
Wonderful. And today we have a special guest.
We do.
I know. Laura. We like to find out what all of our guests are drinking as well. Because, straight up is how we roll. So, Laure Chachere, what are you drinking?
Hello, ladies. Thank you for having me. I am drinking community brand pecan praline
Of
coffee.
course you are. And why are you drinking community coffee?
Good, because I'm from New Orleans, the Big Easy. We have great coffee here, and community is one of our local brands. It's delicious.
I didn't know that. I like community coffee, but I didn't know it was from New Orleans. So that's really cool.
Good stuff, right? And it was on sale at our grocery store from normally $7.99 to $3.99. What?
Wow.
Right?
I mean, when it tastes delicious and it's a steal, it's even better. Just like your blackberry citrus seltzer. I got it right, which I'm going to get some.
So fun fact, Laura, I buy community coffee regularly in my grocery store, but I have found that I don't like the community coffee with chicory. You do not need to flog me for that. I just like the regular community.
I can't do chicory either, especially the Cafe du Monde with chicory. I can't do it.
It's an acquired taste for sure. No doubt about it. Yeah. Adds a little extra oomph there that not everybody's quite ready for.
Very true.
Understood.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Laura. I mean, we know that you're from New Orleans and you drink community coffee. What else do we need to know about Laure Chachere?
Other than that, thank you for having me, guys. So yes, I'm a New Orleans native, born and raised in this crazy city. And I'm married with 3 teenage kids. So that's fun. If we ever want to do a podcast about that, I have plenty to share on that one as well.
I can imagine. People would probably love it as well.
Very active. My background was I got inspired when I did an internship at Disney World back in college. And I said, this is what I want to do. I want to be around people. I want to be in the hospitality industry. So after that, I went into the hotel industry and worked for a big chain for about 10 years. And then found my current job. I work for a face-to-face company that produces trade shows and special events of all sizes. And I am the GM of our location here in New Orleans. So been quite a fun ride, and I've learned many great lessons along the way.
That's awesome.
One of which we're going to talk about today.
Yes, definitely. And I neglected to share our topic earlier. This is one of my favorite topics. I've found myself talking about it in many different ways with many different people. So I am personally really excited about this episode. We are going to talk about leadership courage. And I think this is an interesting topic because it's not something that was talked about, at least for me, until I wasn't super familiar with it until recently, at least by that name. But I would love to know, just gut instinct off the top of your head, for both of you, Regina and Laura, what do you think of when you think of leadership courage? What even is that? I had somebody ask me that recently, which is why I'm asking now.
I can go first. I also cheated because what I did was I wanted to pull out an old favorite, very simple book, The 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader. It's a John Maxwell book.
Oh, yes. Very familiar.
Of course you are. And so one of the things that I love and I've had highlighted for years in this book is in the courage section, one of the 21 indisputable qualities of leadership is courage. And so he says, or he writes about Eleanor Roosevelt. and what she said. And
Which is so crazy because we had an entire episode with an Eleanor Roosevelt quote.
oh, I know, but there's more. Like this ties back
Okay.
to every episode we have ever done.
Ah.
Okay. So, and I have two things. So I'll share the first one. The first one is the Eleanor Roosevelt quote that says, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. You must do the thing you think you cannot do."
Oh, I love that. I've only ever heard the end of that quote. And if it's in that book, I really should remember it because I used to teach from that book all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot courage was one of the indisputable laws. But oh, how does everything come back to fear?
Everything comes back to fear. And I think it's because fear is a primal emotion. It is like the first emotion that humans felt. It's how we evolved, it's how we stayed alive, right? You have to be afraid of the cougar in order to know to run from it.
Mm-hmm. And in some cases, it serves us well. It did from the cougar, but still, sometimes, we go into fight or flight, and sometimes fear is a good motivator. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is. So, Laura, when you think of leadership courage, hi, Walter, what do you think of?
I love Walter. Yeah, exactly. I think, it's when we think of courage, you think of like bravery and strength, right? But really, I think a lot of times it's vulnerability, right? It comes from circumstances that are beyond your control. You have to find it. Sometimes you find it by accident, and then you have to learn from it and then really just step in and believe in it and believe in it for yourself.
Yeah, definitely believing in yourself and overcoming that fear, which we've talked about a lot, but it's so important, especially for leadership courage, especially for females, I feel like. So, Laura, for you, what are some circumstances in your life that helped you develop courage in the first place? Because I feel like it's not something that just happens as you're an adult in the workplace. You got to have courage along the way.
Agreed, agreed. And I think it everybody finds it through their own personal experiences too. It takes a lot longer for some people to find it, and it's various levels, right? I have a very distinct situation that helped me find courage. So back in July of 2008, so 12 years ago, I had just been promoted to a sales leadership role in the company that I'm currently with. And I kind of entered it, a little nervous. Most of the people that were reporting to me in this role had more tenure than me, had quite a bit more experience than me. So I was a little nervous about taking that role. Excited, but nervous. Just a few short months later, at a routine doctor's visit, I found out that I had stage 3 breast cancer. So that was quite surprising. I had very young kids at the time, and had to go through everything, unfortunately, that you have to go through with that. The chemo, radiation, multiple surgeries. It was really putting an entire year of my life just on hold. And through that whole situation, um, I was determined that I was going to show up at work. And when I say show up, I didn't feel great. you know, I had chemo brain's a real thing. I wasn't always completely there mentally, but I felt like for me to feel normal, I needed to show up. Um, and I felt a little guilty about that sometimes because I was like, I'm not contributing like I need to be as a leader right now. What are my colleagues are picking up, all of the pieces that I feel like I'm dropping, having to step up and take care of a lot of the things that I normally would be taking care of. But then ironically, through that whole situation, people kept telling me how inspiring that was and how courageous I was. So in a time when I didn't feel very courageous, I realized that, that's what people are picking up on. Why? Well, I think it's because I was vulnerable. I was forced at that time to empower and rely on others. And when it came down to it, that was a very satisfying and bonding
That's right.
experience for all of us to work together. And for me to sit back and see those successes happen during a time frame when I felt like personally I was not accomplishing very much.
That's incredible. Oh, I have so much to say about what you just shared. Um, First of all, I'm also a breast cancer survivor. So,
What a club.
yeah,
Guys.
well, welcome to the crazy, weird
The
sisterhood
weirdest club ever.
you
Yeah.
never want to be a part of, but we're here. So, congratulations. How many years is it for you?
12 years.
12
12
years.
years. How about you, Jen?
13
Wow.
this week. Last week,
Fantastic.
this week. Yeah. So, yeah, we're right there together. That's incredible. I was 26 at the time, so it was definitely a shock, but I definitely remember the feeling of people telling me. I had completely forgotten about that, telling me I was brave and courageous, and in a in an interesting time when you feel none of that. So that's so interesting. I don't know that I ever really thought of that. And then also, it makes me think of Lynn's episode on leading through trauma as well, on how you showed up vulnerably and were just so vulnerable and honest and allowed people to take things. So that's now the second time somebody is saying that they got through a difficult time by being vulnerable and leaning on others. That was certainly true for me as well. So that's, gosh, it just all interrelates so much more than I ever thought different topics would. But congratulations to you. That's wonderful.
Right back at you.
Now, wonderful that we
Survivors.
went through it, but wonderful that we're here to tell the tale.
You learn lessons, though. Anybody who goes through that comes away with lessons.
For sure.
learned.
So what did that teach you about being a leader moving forward?
So many things about leadership courage. So one thing I realized was that, you need the courage to make mistakes sometimes, right? And part of that is that you own the mistakes, you admit to them, and that you acknowledge them. I do have a very personal experience about that one as well. I had a direct report who, I think that the simplest way to put this is that our styles just clashed, right? She tended to be a glass half empty type person, and I struggled with that a lot. And I had a hard time leading her. Again, I was a new leader at the time. It was just tricky for me to understand her. Our company did some re-engineering in our sales department, and she ended up reporting to a different sales leader. And when I was watching her after those, that couple of years that she was reporting to this different person, she just blossomed, right? And I realized that that's the sales leader she was reporting up to, had just really took the time to understand where she was coming from, much more, was just more intuitive to how to really provide her that positive encouragement that she needed. And her whole personality really just changed and blossomed under this person, And I felt really like I had let her down. And one day I said, you know what? I need to talk to her about this. And I just went in her office and we closed the door. And I said, I want to acknowledge something that it's a little hard for me to, but
Again, being
I feel like,
vulnerable.
correct. I feel like I, failed you as a leader. I was not a mature leader at the time, and I did not understand how to support you. And to see how you, blossomed this last couple of years, it's amazing. I wish that I had been a better leader to you. And it was such a great conversation. It was so liberating. And it was just, I did put myself in a very vulnerable position and later just realized that did take courage to walk in and do that. So having that conversation made me realize, have those conversations with people. Don't shy away from them, right?
That's fantastic. And especially for those listening, whether you're a seasoned leader or whether you're young in your career, when you think of leadership courage at first, at least for me, vulnerability and making mistakes definitely does not pop to the top of the list. I think of
courage to fight a battle.
Right.
Yeah. To let your position be heard when it's going against the status quo, right? Like
strong, like trailblazing. Like that's what I think of when I think of leadership courage at first. But what you said is just so important. And I want to make sure people hear that and listen to it. Sometimes the courage is in doing the hard things and being vulnerable and making mistakes. So how did that conversation go?
It went great, and it completely changed our relationship as well, because we she recognized too, she said, I've had some time to reflect as well, and just realized that I wasn't always approaching things with a positive attitude. So I think it was helpful for both of us, and again, it did change the way I approach people now.
I was going
That
to
just,
ask. So has it changed your leadership style completely?
I think so. I definitely think so. And I'm not afraid to speak up anymore. I think that's another part of this too. Not just speak up about, when you make mistakes, but speak up when you feel strong about something, when you have convictions about something. One other thing I learned through my leadership journey is, don't always assume that the people who are more tenured or maybe have the reputations for being more outspoken are going to have the courage to speak up when the time is right. A lot of times we'll sit back and think, well, these people, this person I know is going to speak up about this, and they might not, right? And I learned a valuable lesson about that one too. This is through COVID. Obviously, I'm in the face-to-face industry. It affected our industry tremendously. So, our company had to make some hard decisions, some big tough decisions, and there was a very high level decision that was made that affected our furloughed employees at the time. And I didn't understand why this decision was made, and I just didn't feel good about it. And I knew that many of my colleagues felt the same way about this, and I really assumed that someone would speak up. And when it turns out, I felt compelled enough about this that I did speak up to senior leadership, and it turns out I was maybe the only one who did.
Wow.
Right? That was a little surprising to me, and I was a little nervous when I realized that. And the decision in question, it wasn't overturned, but once I understood the context around why it was made, it made sense to me. And I realized it wasn't going to be reversed, but me having the courage to speak up did affect how that message was going to be delivered to our employees, which had a huge impact, positive impact on how it was received.
And that's so important, especially what you said going into this is that sometimes people sit back and don't speak up because they assume they know less. And because they assume the senior leaders will speak up sometimes or have different contexts, which may have been a little true in the situation, but your leadership courage still helped shape a positive experience in a really difficult time. And what sometimes when I am working with people, especially younger in their careers, sometimes what you don't realize is that you have a very unique perspective where you sit based on, the things that you're exposed to, the people that you're exposed to, that sometimes senior leaders aren't. And so even if they may have more experience, they don't have your unique perspective. And if you can see something that someone else can't, that is when your leadership courage is really important to take the initiative and speak up.
I think that also when you think about your principles, and if we go back to like your values, when you think about your principles, your values, your conviction, what you explained to us is that your principles, your values, and your conviction were more important. They were stronger than your desire to appease others.
That's a great point.
And I think that a lot of times that's what courage comes down to. Like it's that grapple between your convictions, your principles, your values, and appeasing others. And you're playing that teeter-totter game. Do I appease or do I move forward with my principles and my convictions?
That's right. And that draws into that whole servant leadership concept too, right? Like we are here as leaders to represent the people who might not have a voice at the table.
That's right.
Right. And it is our responsibility as leaders to speak up, even if it's, even if it's uncomfortable.
Even if it's uncomfortable, even if you're afraid, even if you're scared of what the outcome could be.
Going back to fear, always somehow going back to fear. It's so funny. I know we've talked about this before. I just didn't think that would be a theme of this podcast, but it's so important, especially for female leaders. I feel like that's even more important. Speaking of female leaders, hitting issues directly, receiving feedback, things like that. I know you mentioned that briefly previously. Talk to us a little bit about your take on leadership courage and feedback and hitting things directly.
Yeah. Oh boy, I feel so strongly about this. It has to be done. Those uncomfortable conversations have to be done. And I think I've realized this through watching people with, addressing performance issues. It's one of those things. It's a lot of times just more convenient, or the performance issue is small enough that you can just really kind of ignore it, turn away from it, hope it goes away on its own. Maybe not address it directly because it doesn't seem like it's a big deal.
And how does that work?
Well, when we don't address it, though, then you're letting those things escalate, and it becomes so much harder to address it when it's a huge issue,
Yes,
right?
and sometimes by not saying something, you're even reinforcing it unknowingly.
Correct. I had a leader who taught me that at my very beginning of my leadership journey, and that he was so strongly convicted about this, and he was so right. And he said, don't ever ignore it. Have those uncomfortable conversations. A lot of times people don't even recognize that they're, going the wrong direction. You can reset it from the very beginning before it gets big and out of hand. And then I think through COVID also, I've learned that I had to have, some of these very uncomfortable conversations with people about their roles. That was tough. We downsized, and locally, we had people that had been long-term A+ employees that we had to let go.
Oh, that's so hard.
It was awful, right? Awful. And not a conversation I would have ever anticipated I had to have with some of these folks, and of course people are, that it's horrible news to have to give anybody, right? But people are wondering, am I going to be able to come back? What's my future going to hold? And, you also have to have the courage to have those direct conversations with people, right? I'm not sure. We are downsizing our business. We do not know what our business is going to look like in, 1, 2, 5, 10 years. We are very positive and hopeful that everything's going to come back and that we can bring it back, but I can't tell you that we can. I can't tell you that we can. Those were hard conversations to have. They were very emotional conversations to have, but I'm so glad that I was direct with people, and to this day, we keep in touch with most of these folks. A lot of them have found other roles. They've had to find, the courage to step out of something that they might have known, an industry they've known their whole lives, and are doing something completely different. And a lot of them are really thriving, which is, great to see. But that was tough.
That's
so
I
think,
hard. And I feel like so many employees across the globe received that message in the last year and a half. And so sometimes being a leader is having the courage to do the really hard things in the right way, in a kind way.
And then when you think about it, they have been forced into a position where they had to find courage through something that they probably never thought, they would go through.
No.
And it's happened. I'm sure if we were having this podcast with some of them, they'd have some amazing stories to tell as well, right?
That's a really good point from a leadership courage standpoint for our listeners. If there's anyone out there that has experienced this in the last year and received a message like that, and how did you have the courage to do something different? Gosh, we would love to hear that.
Let's talk about the receiving feedback and how you have to have the courage to accept that.
That's right. So, just like you don't want to assume that others are going to speak up on their behalf, don't always assume that your leaders are comfortable giving you constructive or candid feedback.
Truth.
Sometimes you need to have the courage to ask and be willing and have the courage to hear what the reply is.
So true.
I do have a good personal story about that too. So a senior leader in our company, so my boss's boss, holds probably bi-weekly meetings with all of the leaders. And on most of these meetings for quite a while, he was assigning out projects to, it seemed like the same group of people. And I felt like, why am I never being assigned these projects? I'm certainly capable of doing some of these things. I felt like I just wasn't being assigned the projects that I could have stepped up and handled. And I finally just called him up one day and I said, I just want to chat with you about something. We had our leadership call today. I was like, it seems like you're assigning the projects to the same folks. I want to step up. I'm willing to, handle some of this. And, I just asked him, why don't you assign these projects to me? And, I threw him. He was not expecting that. And he said, Laura, I'm glad you're bringing this up. And he said, I have my perception of you on our calls and again, this isn't somebody I work with every day, right? So it's somebody who doesn't sit here with me. My perception of you on these calls is that you are somewhat of a, and he used the word wallflower. And I was like, oh my
Wow.
gosh. Like I had never been called a wallflower in my life. I don't see myself
Yeah.
as that.
When I think of sales leaders, I don't think of wallflowers.
Right. And it really took me aback. And as we dug into it deeper, he just said, I know that you have great opinions, and I know that you have stepped up to express them to other people, but on these calls you don't speak up. And he said, so I'm not comfortable giving out projects on these calls to somebody that I think might not speak up to it. And I was like, wow, I was surprised. I was a little taken aback, but as I thought about it, I'm like, that makes perfect sense. And I'm missing a huge opportunity, right, to assert myself as a leader by not talking up on these calls. And that us just having that conversation, which was a hard conversation to have, completely changed our relationship and completely changed how I think he started to see me.
Well, and that's something you shared on what is leadership courage? It's speaking up. And so is that where that came from?
No, the irony of that whole thing was I felt like I was speaking up, but when I really reflected on it, I was speaking up in audiences where I was comfortable, right? I was
Got
speaking
it.
up in audiences where I felt confident, not in audiences where I hadn't quite built up the courage to speak up. So that's where I realized, boy, you have do it everywhere. Do it everywhere in your life. Don't be afraid.
So true.
Wow.
And I remember being younger in my career, being afraid to speak up in meetings. And I think maybe I've even shared this before. What's really frustrating is when you don't speak up and somebody shares the thought or idea that you were going to share and they receive recognition and praise for it. And then you're sitting back going, that was my idea. Oh, but guess what? You didn't share it. So it's not your idea.
And you're like, why didn't I say something? Why didn't I
Yes.
say something?
Guys, that happens to me all the time. And I think it goes back to the imposter syndrome, right? I'm afraid to speak up because what if it's not smart enough? What if it's not good enough? What if somebody is like, oh, that stinks? And so there's that courage there too, to know, sometimes you just have to speak up. And Laura, what you said about only speaking up with people you're comfortable with, that is a huge thing for me and a huge growth opportunity. And I think I needed to hear that today. I think I needed you to share that story for me to realize that, yeah, Regina, you've got to get out there even when you're not comfortable with the audience.
As your friend and peer and someone that works with you all the time, Regina, that is shocking to me and something that I would never have known about you, because maybe I'm in the meetings where you are comfortable to speak up,
Yes, always.
but that is so surprising to me. I can't believe you feel that way. And because you're amazing, you're a badass. And I'm glad that you heard that message.
Yeah, I needed that today. Thank you, Laura. Thank you for having the courage to share that.
I agree that she is amazing and badass as well.
She is for sure.
Stop it, but keep going.
So, final thoughts on leadership courage. We've talked about a lot. I think, Regina, you shared, we've talked about making mistakes and, what shapes our leadership courage, having the courage to speak up, getting feedback, giving feedback, being direct. But at the heart of it, what would you share about leadership courage?
I think it's a personal journey, and it involves emotional intelligence, and that you have to be open to the fact that you're going to have potential mishaps along the way. And as leaders, it's probably one of the most impactful qualities I think that we can possess because it's tangible. People can watch your actions and they can learn from them, they can gain inspiration from them, and they can model them.
So true. Such a great point. And that's something we didn't talk about yet. So I'm glad you mentioned it. You said making mistakes, but if you're going to be vulnerable and you're going to put yourself out there, you're going to speak up. It's not always going to be great. It's not always going to be, oh, Jen, that was exactly what we needed to hear. That's a wonderful idea. Sometimes it's going to fall flat and you learn from that.
And as leaders, you have to let your own people make mistakes as well, right? Let them try things out, but be there for support. That takes some courage as well sometimes.
Yeah. And then as a courageous leader, when your team members make mistakes, you also still have to stand up for them and make sure you're still their advocate and in their space instead of throwing them under the bus. Right. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. Sorry to bring that up too, but yeah, absolutely. So Laura, if we were to ask you, what can the person listening right now do in the next 24 hours to build up their leadership courage and to develop this strength and this skill, what would you say?
I would say find one thing that you've been wanting to speak up about, or a conversation that you've had, wanted to have that you haven't had, and just take it in baby steps. Grab that one thing and just do it. Because what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? Right? Do it. Just do it.
I love that. My personal motto for things like that is take a deep breath and just do it.
Do it scared.
Do it scared. Harkening back to another episode that we love as
That's
well.
right.
Oh, definitely. Well, we can't thank you enough, Laura. Thank you. Now to transition to another segment, because as leaders, it's so important to fill our own cup so that we can fill others as well. We can take care of our teams and our people. So, Regina, what are you doing to fill your cup?
I feel like I'm doing lots and lots and lots of things. We have, we've been working on our house a lot and doing a lot of things around that. But we're also, as a family, kind of diving into summer really well and spending some time around water. So today I'm actually picking my boys up early from their summer camp and we are headed to the pool. And I am so excited to spend that good quality mom time with my boys.
Especially when they're so excited about summer and they're just so adorable.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So, Laura, what are you doing to fill your cup?
So when we finish our podcast today, I'm actually taking the afternoon off, which I rarely do, but I have some friends in from out of town. So we're going to go to the French Quarter for the first time. I haven't been down there since COVID. So I'm super excited about that. And we're going to go to a fabulous restaurant called Galatoire's and have a really long leisurely lunch. And I can't wait. And then I'm going to take my girls shopping for their dorms because they're both going to college. One's going to be in her second year and one's just starting. So we're going to go dorm shopping all weekend, which I'm really excited about that as well.
Oh, and good for the French Quarter. It's back and you're going and restaurants and new life experiences for the kiddos. Oh, that sounds wonderful. I love it.
Can I just share a really quick New Orleans story? So every time I would travel to New Orleans, and I traveled to New Orleans before Laura and I worked together for years. And I love crawfish, but because I'm not a native New Orleansian, I would a New Orleanian. No, that didn't work. Say it again, Laura.
Close enough.
Okay. Since I wasn't a native New Orleanian, I would go to different restaurants with different people and they bring crawfish out like in paper, like these just big things of crawfish. And they usually just kind of dump them on the table. Right. Or you get a box and they bring a box out and I'd be like, oh yeah, I don't know how to do this. And so any good New Orleanian will peel your crawfish for you for the first time. They'll only do it once. And so I would abuse this. I abused this for years and never peeled my own crawfish because I would always go with someone new and tell them I didn't know how to do it. Y'all, that wasn't a very good leadership courage story. That was more of a Regina's a big fat liar story.
Funny.
And to all of the people who did that for me, thank you.
I'm that way about lobster because Tom's mom's whole family is from Boston and it's just a thing that you're supposed to know how to take an entire lobster and take it apart and eat all of it. And the first time I sat with a whole lobster on my plate at his mom's house, his parents' house, I just kind of looked like, what do I do?
The Purdums are fancy.
Well, actually, in Boston, it's not fancy. It is, her father was a fisherman for a while. And so it's like you get your own food and that's what you have for dinner. So not the fancy kind of lobster, but they do bring it back. And so I was sitting at his mom's table, like, what do I do? So I like dive in, cut myself, bleed all over the tablecloth. So that was my first story. But because of that, I've never had to crack,
I think so.
take
Yeah,
apart. I
crack
don't even
your
know how
own
to say it.
lobster.
Yeah, I've never had to do that. Tom's done it for me for the rest of our days. So
It's like my dirty little secret is that I don't like crawfish, which is unheard of here. Like it,
ooh, and now you're saying it on air.
I know. So I'm quite sure that I've never peeled a crawfish for Regina.
I am shocked. No, I don't think you have, but I am
I
shocked.
go to, yeah, I don't do them. I go to several crawfish bowls though. A lot. I mean, that's a thing now. Everybody's got crawfish bowls during crawfish seasons, but they put all kinds of other stuff in
Oh,
there
so
too, right? So
good.
there's like garlic and potatoes and corn and
Sausage.
I eat all that
Oh.
stuff. I just leave the crawfish for everybody else. So just kind of fake it.
Jen, what about you? Obviously not cracking a lobster.
Not cracking a lobster. So interestingly, it's what has filled my cup in the last week. Because we did lose Bella, and you think that because she's 12 and because she lived a wonderful life, maybe it's not going to be as difficult. And I'll just tell you that's not true. It's so hard and we miss her so much. But some people are crazy about dogs. Some people are like, dogs are just pets. And so I was like a little hesitant to be vulnerable and share like actually how torn up we are about it. But I didn't have to, because the people that know me and love me knew that and reached out. And our house is full of yellow and golden flowers, and people sent cookies and wine, and our friends have cried with us. And Regina, you did, when I was supposed to meet you for coffee and I couldn't because we had an emergency with her. My parents have cried. And so I think it's just really filled my cup and been so incredibly touching to Tom and to me, just about how people have experienced it with us. And I never even had to go there about, well, it's not just a dog to me. We don't have kids, there are babies. I never had to say that because people knew that and shared the experience with us. And that has completely, completely filled my cup. And then one other thing, we're going to get a golden rose bush this weekend and plant it in her memory in our front. And our neighbors are really excited about it because she was a barker. She's been barking on the podcast before. So when people walk by, she would bark. And our neighbors are so sad that they don't hear that bark anymore when they walk by. So they're equally as excited about the rose bush in the front. So they still can kind of honor Bella when they walk by. And then I also got a bracelet. I have like Yearly Company, plug for Yearly Company. It's a company that grandmother, her husband gave her a golden bangle every year for their wedding anniversary. And so the daughters and then the granddaughters also, their husbands have started that tradition as well. And they couldn't find the bangles after a while. And so this woman like took a metalworks course at Vanderbilt and started her own company called Yearly Company. And so they have different types of bangles. And so I had two that were given to me and very special. And so I just got a third one. It's yellow gold for my yellow girl, my golden girl. And then it has a bee on it.
A tiny bee for Bella.
A tiny bee for Bella. So that has also filled my cup.
That's great. I just have to quickly say that I think this is when you realize how important it is to have people in your life who you love, right?
A support group.
All those people that you line up in your life when something like that happens and they rally around you. That's where you, it's such a big life lesson of just how important it is to have good people in your life.
True. And you get to feeling like,
yeah,
gosh, what are we doing right that we have these people in our lives that love us?
The most important decision you can make, to put the right people in your life.
Yes. So it's been amazing, actually.
Ooh, girls, I don't want to stop, but Jen, let's wrap us up. How can they find us?
All right. So you can find us on Instagram and Facebook. Leaderish Podcast. You can email us on leaderishpodcast@gmail.com and find our link tree. And you can find our podcast, Leaderish Leadership Lessons, straight up wherever you find podcasts.
Laura, thank you so much for today and for being just so open and honest with us. And if it's okay, I would like to offer a toast.
Love it.
So our toast for today, I think, should be here's to courage, here's to being afraid, and here's to understanding your values and being ready to speak up when it's time. Cheers.
Cheers to that. And thank you for having me. This was fantastic. Thank you.
You bet.